Hello and welcome to Barbara's Podcast. This is the show for women, all about health, nutrition, and wellness. It's the show that will empower you and inspire you to create a healthier lifestyle.
Hello and welcome to the show where we explore the world of holistic health and wellness. Today I'm excited to introduce Dr. Lum Frundi, who is a board-certified pediatrician and founder of Generational Wellbeing. She's passionate about helping families create lasting, healthy eating habits one bite at a time. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
No, it's my pleasure. So just a little background. What inspired you to create Generational Wellbeing, and why is it so important to focus on building lifelong healthy eating habits from childhood?
Over the years, with practicing medicine or taking care of kids and their families, I realized that most kids we started diagnosing kids with chronic disease conditions. And these kids were eating like their parents did, who also had these conditions. And as years have gone by, with more research coming up, we're learning about epigenetics and stuff where lifestyle, more so than genetics, is directly impacting what happens later on in life. So I started out saying, hey, you can actually change it. Yes, there's a family history. Yes, there's genetics. That's a component to it. But with your lifestyle, you can change that outcome for yourself and your family for generations to come.
Yes, I know. Kids who are exposed to balanced whole food diets from an early age are more likely to maintain these habits into adulthood.
Right, right. We eat like our parents did.
Yes. and and cook and cook the way they did. So, we've got
Yes.
to find a way to change some of these patterns.
Right. Right. I say you take the ones that are serving you and you throw out the ones that are not serving you. You can't do the same thing because what served them at that point may not necessarily be serving you now. So really, instead of doing things by routine, you can start looking, okay, how's this serving me? If it's not, we switch it around and and do better for our kids and for us. Yes.
Well, yes. Um, well, picky eating is a common struggle for many parents. So what are some of the biggest misconceptions about picky eaters, and how can parents shift their approach to meal times? Because I know it becomes such a struggle where there's arguments, there's, fights, there's screaming kids, and how can you turn this around?
But picky eating, I will start out where sometimes it is just a developmental stage, especially once your kids reach about 2 to 3 years old. They started asserting themselves. They started saying no to things, and they want that level of control. So they start out saying no to certain things, especially if they're not particularly interested in it. But when that no works, so if I present to you something, I say no, and I get whatever I want, that habit is then reinforced where, oh, every time I say no, I get what I want. And
Yes.
it becomes like ingrained. And then over time, now trying to switch as a parent, giving them what they want instead of what you would want them to have, it becomes that habit, that cycle where I don't have to eat lunch. But if I say no to lunch, I get a snack, which is sweet, which is highly processed, which is high calorie, and I can graze throughout the day until dinner time. If you at that point present something that I don't like, I can still say no. Why? Because I've grazed throughout the day. I am not full, and I know I'll get my snack after that. So it is a developmental stage. And then sometimes as parents, because we want to nourish our kids and stuff, because again, there are times where like, oh my goodness, my kid hasn't eaten all day. I would rather them have this bag of chips than have them go to bed without anything on their tummy. Like I'm starving my kids. So it's just inherent. But this kids know that they're going to get what they want. These are for the the healthy kids. Now there are extreme levels with sensory processing disorder, ARFID, and other things where if your kid is experiencing extreme anxiety or phobia of food and stuff, that's a different thing that you need to see your child's medical provider to make sure that they do an assessment and they work with someone one-on-one to help them face the
Yeah.
fears or the sensory or whatever else is going on.
Yeah. Yeah, because there are some children who do have deeper reasons and sensory preferences or anxiety around foods, especially some children who have autism or Asperger's.
Right. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm talking about normal, healthy kids here. But with those kids, of course, we know we have to really take our time and work through that sensory processing to expand their palates too.
Yeah. So with many
And
parents, feeling frustrated when their child refuses to eat vegetables or try new foods, what are your top 3 practical strategies to make nutritious eating more fun and engaging for kids?
okay, the very first one I would say is having some sort of structure with the
Yes.
mealtime. Because then, if you have structure where we have breakfast, we have lunch, we have dinner, and if your kids eat snacks, maybe no more than 2 servings of snacks a day,
Yeah.
that will avoid that grazing throughout the day, and you'll bring them to the table hungry enough to at least take a bite or two. Because
Yeah.
once they get to that table and they're not hungry enough to even take a bite, and then it becomes frustrating. I made the dinner, you're not eating, but the kid is not hungry because they
Yeah.
know they're going to go back and get whatever else they want. So the very first thing I really recommend is having that structure where there's nothing to eat at least 2 hours. That gives your digestive system at least time to digest and process what they've eaten before, and gives them that allows them time to actually feel hunger, because you want your body to feel the hunger and fullness cues, right? And we're not allowing them to feel that. So eating is no longer I'm eating to nourish my body, I'm eating because I'm hungry, but I'm just eating because it's there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the number one thing. The second thing is that I usually say, you are a guard over your house. You guard and protect whatever is coming into your house, right? Because whatever comes into your house is fair game. If you have an eye level, eyesight, all the things you don't want them to eat, that's setting yourself up for failure, because a lot of kids that don't have that discipline enough to say, oh, I am seeing this big box of chips or big box of candy or whatever that may be, and I love it, and that's all I want to eat. As long as it's there, as long as I see it, that's food to me. I don't understand why you're giving me this other thing that may be foreign to me that I should eat, because again, what they will go to is the taste of sweetness is easier than the taste of vegetables that is a bit on the bitter or estrogen side. So with the
Yeah.
sweet taste, they'll draw a more easily gravitate to it. But with the other taste, they need to become familiar with it. So it's not like, oh, I gave you this vegetable, you did not eat it. That vegetable, if they've not seen it before, they're not very familiar with it, they've not seen you eat it before, they're probably not going to want to eat it because they're not familiar. It's just like, what is this? I don't know what this is. So that leads me to the third thing I usually say, you model to them what you want them to, how they want to eat. Because if you're eating all this bag of chips, you're drinking all this sodas, you're drinking juice and stuff, you can't turn around and say, oh, well, you got to drink your water. Oh, well, you have to eat your vegetables. But they don't see you eating it because they have to learn from you again how to eat.
Yeah. You have to set the example.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. I sort of, with my daughter, I used simple strategies. So, if there were carrots, instead of saying, like eat your carrot, it's like, oh, eat power carrots, they're good for your eyes, or
Yes.
spinach, it will make you strong, and, things like that. So that sort of encouraged her to eat vegetables. I sort of pointed out the positives that she would get from them.
From the mill. Absolutely. And I've used also where with kids, a lot of the picky eaters, one of the things that I see is constipation or abdominal discomfort.
Yes.
Yes, because they're not eating anything with the fibers in it. They're not drinking enough fluids to help the bulk up the stool. So one thing I've used is like, oh, you've eaten this, you've not had any veggies, no fiber, your poop is hard, and it's painful when you go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
So when you eat that stuff that has the fiber in it, you have to eat. I use that for my daughter a lot. So she now pays attention, like, okay, I need my vegetables today because it is hard. But then they understand, just like with the carrots, it's good for your eyesight and stuff. You can see everything. And most kids like Spider-Man, you know how Spider-Man can see from far and stuff. So using, because you have to come to their level to help them understand why and give them the benefits of it. Oh, my tummy hurts, maybe it's because you drank a lot of that stuff. It makes your tummy hurt. You're helping them make the connection, not labeling food as good or bad, but
Yeah.
helping them understand how the food affects their bodies. Right?
That's,
Yeah. When you
yeah,
eat this one, your
absolutely.
tummy hurts, your poop is hard, it's painful for it to go. They don't want the pain, so they'll eat whatever it takes. Not most kids will. Like it may take a little bit of reassuring and stuff, and you again modeling it, but most kids will do it because then like, oh, that hurt before, this is how we can use food to help your body, make your body stronger.
Yes. Each child has unique food preferences. So how can parents balance honoring their child's taste while still ensuring they get a well-rounded, nutritious diet? I think that's a real challenge.
Yes, yes, it is. So I there are preferences, and I usually will start out with just having watching and seeing what they eat, what their preferences are, writing a list of their 5 or 10 favorite foods.
Okay.
Usually when you look and see, there's something very there's something common with those things. Either they're like soft texture or crunchy or spicy or bland or even color, right? Because we process foods
Yeah.
through our sensory sight, texture, and all of that stuff before we even put it in our mouths. So if you notice then that your kid has certain preferences to more so soft foods or white foods, say the kid will eat spaghetti,
Yeah.
they don't even want anything red on the spaghetti. I've had kids who like they'll eat spaghetti, they'll eat rice, they'll eat bread, everything white. If
Yes.
the moment you put spaghetti sauce on it, it's like game over, just because it's just like everything white is good. You can then, instead of taking that kid from liking all white and trying to go colorful with it, that's going to backfire in no time. You can
Yeah.
start out with that same color pattern and say, okay, I'm going to have you get shredded grilled chicken or something like that, where it is still within your color preference, maybe a little bit difference in texture, but I'll make it as bland as possible. Because usually when it's just white without anything on it, they prefer the bland taste. So really understanding those preferences and starting to introduce foods closer to the preferences and expanding. I'll have you eat baked potatoes, maybe even, and add some olive oil on it and stuff. And next
Yeah.
time you make it, yeah. So it's just starting from there and understanding these are the foods that you like, and I will expand right from there. The big thing with that is it takes time. It's not a quick fix. It takes time. So you have to be patient and you have to release the pressure. So even when you put it in there, the fact that the kid even allows it to sit on their plate, it may be a win. There are some kids where it takes up to 2 or 3 times before they'll even touch the food. But if they don't touch it the first time, it's absolutely okay. Now, outside of presenting the food in front of them, that means you have to try to engage with those foods either through cooking with them or calling them to come taste and telling you what it tastes like to them, or even have sensory play outside of that, where I wonder what this tastes like. Oh, how would you describe this? So in essence, you're understanding those preferences as well. That way, as you're cooking, if you have a kid who likes it very stuffed and you like it crunchy and stuff, which is my daughter's like that, I will take mine out, throw it in the oven, and make her soft. And it's the same meal, but I'm catering to her preference and I'm catering to mine without making 2, 3 different meals, because
Yeah.
busy mothers, you don't have time for a second dish on weeknights, especially.
Well, I know there's so many parents that tell me that meal times have turned into power struggles and they're pleading and bribing and negotiating or punishing, and it backfires. So, we definitely have to find some techniques or strategies to turn it into a stress-free, and
Yeah.
joyful, family meals.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
So anxiety, the thing about it is, as frustrating as it is for the parent, most kids are frustrated with it too.
Yeah.
Because if you have every time you go to mealtime, they present something. I usually would tell parents, if that's the first time they're seeing that vegetable, it is foreign to them. It's like you going to a different country and someone is serving a delicacy you've never seen before, and they're shoving you like you have to eat it. You have
Yeah.
to eat it, and you're looking at it like, I have no idea what this is. I've never experienced it before, so it creates a lot of anxiety. So
Sure.
if going through that time after time, it makes it where when it's dinner time, it triggers some sort of anxiety where it's like, I don't know what this is. And I'm anxious to eat the food you've presented to me on the table, on the plate. So I usually start with, once you're doing mealtime, you want to serve a favorite and something new. And that something new may not necessarily be on the child's plate. It may be on your plate where I'm eating it and I'm showing you how to eat it and I'm enjoying it. That may be that first experience where you're eating your stuff. I'm eating the thing that I want you to eat, but I'm right, sort of allowing you to become familiar and see it and watch me eat it, put it in my mouth and chew it and process it, because all of that they hear you chewing, they see how you move the food in your mouth and stuff like that. The
Yeah.
next day, it's still on the table. The next time you present it, maybe on the table, I'll put a little tiny bite size on the plate. I won't put like a whole portion size, again, next to their favorite, where it's smaller than the favorite, but it's not too overwhelming for them. Because if you put it too much, it might be overwhelming and they're not going to try it. So it's time where it takes you giving them choices to allow for that independence. You're allowing them to become familiar first with the foods that you want them to eat before putting that big portion size. And if the 1 second or the second serving, if they try it and the 1 seconds, they can always come back for a second, rather than putting something too big, too overwhelming on their plate where they may not want to eat it, and then it's frustrating for both of you. And just celebrate the wins. If they don't eat it, that's okay, but just pay attention, or bear in mind that you're not getting what you want after this. The next meal is in 2 hours and you can drink only water between meals. Again, if you start drinking milk, or I've seen kids who fill up on milk, I've seen kids who fill up on juices and stuff, where once they come again to that next meal time, they're not hungry and there's still no incentive to eat or make those right choices.
Thank you for that. I find that, that's quite a valuable tip. I think, the simple changes like serving families style meals where kids can choose what goes on their plate, or the food bridges where you're gradually introducing new foods alongside familiar favorites.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I think that can work wonders. Whereas, some of us didn't think of that before. It was always like, yeah, try broccoli, eat the
Eat.
broccoli, or try,
Right. You gotta eat it and like, what is this tree on my plate? I've never seen it before. I don't know what this is. And then yeah. Yeah, and
So
then another thing I'll tell parents too is you just engage with them during mealtime. Most kids, if they're a bit older, I don't like it. It's no longer an answer. If you don't want to eat something, you have to tell me, what about it? Is it too crunchy? Is it too spicy? Is it too this? Because you're giving your parent feedback. Because with broccoli or with carrots or with any vegetables, there's so many ways you can cook it. So you tell me how you like it, and we'll try cooking it. So with the older kids, I usually say try one new vegetable a month. So it's not like I have to eat something new every day. It's less overwhelming. And when you think about it, it's like, okay, it's doable. I can try one new vegetable a month. So that gives it where even if the parent is serving it once a week or twice a week and just doing it different ways, and then we figure out how the kid likes it or how the family likes it. The parent, sometimes we default to our recipes that we know and we've used for a long time. It may be an experience where you're working with your kids. Let's try adding this there and let's see. You may not know. You might like a new recipe and expand your palate while engaging with your kids too.
Well, what do you think about hiding vegetables or fruits in foods? Should we let them know it's there, or should we hide them? For example, if it's in a pasta sauce or in a muffin, what do you think about that? Because there's two schools of thoughts that says, oh yeah, you can hide things so they won't notice, and then there's other schools of thought saying, well, maybe they should know what they're eating so they get used to it and they know what it's called and what it looks like.
Yeah, I prefer to let them know what's in it, and I still will use squash for my pasta sauce.
Okay.
I'm like, that's how I cook it. That's we're putting in the squash. They don't know what it is. I'm putting some more tomato sauce in there. They don't know what it is, and I'm cooking it, and that's your tomato sauce. So, not necessarily hiding that that's the recipe I'm using, as opposed to I'm hiding this in there so that you can eat it. Oh, we tried another new recipe for muffins. I put bananas in there. I
Yeah.
use instead of the white flour, you're using a healthier option for flour. So you may throw in some ground flax seeds in there. Again, not necessarily hiding, but we're just trying a new recipe that will
Yeah.
help your tummy feel better. What do you think about it? So, because sometimes when we start hiding it and they're used to one familiar taste, some kids will then refuse to eat that food because they think you're hiding something in there.
Yeah.
I'd
No.
rather have it where we're trying a new recipe. This is that recipe. I don't like this recipe. We might switch it a little bit, but I'm not going to go back to white flour, but we'll try alternatives and stuff.
Yeah.
We'll add the flax seeds in there, and half the time with most of those flax seeds and the nut butters and stuff, it kind of tastes similar, right? But if you start hiding and just changing stuff for them, there's some kids who then will stop eating that favorite because mommy maybe put something in there.
Okay. I find that also involving kids in cooking a meal also helps. If you get
Yes.
them to sort of help to cut a carrot or making muffins, whatever it may be, involving them so then they see how something is made and how it tastes also helps. Has that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. It helps because that's part of that exposure because you want them to be familiar with the foods that is coming to their plate on the table. So they're not seeing it again that very first time on the table, this thing that is foreign and you want me to eat it. But if we went to the grocery store, when we pick the foods together, you pick the new vegetable. I'll tell the older ones, pick that new vegetable you want to try this month. You go out there, you pick it, you come in, we wash
Yeah.
it, you cut it, depending on how old your kid is, and they're familiar with it one step at a time. And by the time it gets to the table, this is the food we make. Now, you can have kids who would you go through the entire process and then they still may just taste it, and it's still okay because it's still a process. The next time we'll continue doing it. But once they see that this is how we do things, this is how we eat, and this is the process, with time they will fall through and they will start eating the way you eat because we're not going back to giving you the other things that we know are not necessarily good for your health. So the biggest thing is just being patient and then being consistent with it that this is how it is. If when you started, I tell parents, be ready to be
Yeah.
ready that they may not like it, they may not taste it the first time, but stay consistent. And if they say they don't like it, that's absolutely okay. We're not going to be mad about it. We'll just say, okay, we'll try again tomorrow. And before you know it, once they find that they're not liking it or they know it's not getting the response they want, they will eventually start eating the way you eat.
It needs a lot of patience, perseverance, and you do have to keep on at it and not
Yes.
give in to their whims.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And again, I want to really go back and emphasize that these are for the kids who
Yes.
are healthy kids, because there's some kids who, if they have some sensory or some oral motor disorders, or some kids who have autism, they will go for the whole day without eating. I've seen kids who would just like, yep, I am not hungry. I am not hungry. I am not going to eat it. So if you have one of those kids, of course, your process is going to be even slower, more so. But there is a chance that you can still expand their palates. It may, instead of taking 5 months for one, it might take 2 years for those kids. So just being extremely patient. Yeah.
Okay, well, in closing, where can our listeners get in touch with you?
I am on Facebook. I have a Facebook group, Generational Wellbeing, and on Instagram, drlummd.com. And finally, I do have a YouTube channel, Kids Nutrition and Picky Eating Strategies. And you can find me in all those platforms.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Lum, for sharing your expertise and insights with us today. It's been an absolute pleasure having you as my guest.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you again for your time and for being such a lovely guest on my show.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Barbara's podcast. Don't forget to sign up for our newsletter or e-courses. Celebrate life, and see you at the next episode.